Alright, since I get asked this 100 billion times every time I post an MRAP bench, I'm going to be going over the science of pulse presses. So, let's draw a bench. Terribly. Yeah, let's add a person. Alright, so, pulse press mitigates a lot of stress on the elbows and on the titties, the pectorals. So, let's say I personally have 8 inches from lockout to my chest. And bar path kind of looks like this, right? Or some form, some arching movement. You're gonna have an arch and bar path. So let's relook at the 8 inches. Lockout grinds your joints, and you have something called cartilage between your, let's draw some bones here. So this is forearm, and it kind of connects to the other bones. And right in here, this would be the bone under the tricep. You got cartilage. Locking out grinds that cartilage. That's why when you fully extend your arms and elbows, they click because the cartilage is wearing down, and the clicking is your bone on bone. Sometimes it's just ligaments moving away. So you got 8 inches. Within the 8 inches, there's kind of 3 phases to the bench press: the lockout, the middle, and off the chest. So if we look at lockout, let me circle it in red. Lockout, there's a very large difference between what you can the poundage that you can lock out versus the poundage that you can get off of your chest. And there's a even bigger difference between lockout and the middle. Most people have a weak point in the middle, so either the middle or off the chest. These are weak points, and the lockout kind of just goes and fucks itself. So, out of these 8 inches, we really only have to look at 2 parts because lockout is gone. Poof. For example, when I benched 500 pounds, only 500 pounds, I could lock out 600 pounds for multiple reps. Why would I do that? Because I had a large inflated ego. So, middle part, we're going to denote M, and off the chest, we're going to denote C, right? So, in C, a very large component is going to be leg drive and triceps and shoulders. In M, there's a lot of biceps and pectorals, right? I may have those backwards, but who cares? Because the reason we do pulse presses is none of these. It breaks down to a little virgin known as Isaac Newton. He's my boy. So Isaac Newton was a physicist in, I believe it was the 1600s, and he discovered force equals mass times acceleration. Force equals mass times acceleration. So to move something, like an object, you have to apply a force to move it, which means, based on one of his laws of physics, an object at rest stays at rest unless acted upon by an outside force. So this little boy here with no force means no move. So let's get our terrible picture of the bench press going. You can technically keep a weight on your chest. Those are arms and elbows. You can keep a weight on the chest with 0 force. So 0 force. If it's not moving, that doesn't mean there are no forces acting upon it, because there's always the force of gravity. And then since it's not just going through the floor and through you, there's a normal force. So what we want to focus on is this normal force. And so let's say you have 100 kilograms. We're going to use kilograms, even though they've never been on the moon, because Newton used kilograms. Kilograms per second equals 100 newtons. Cool. Named it after yourself. Good job there. So if you have 100 kilograms sitting on the floor, it's on the floor, the gravitational force equals the acceleration due to gravity times the mass. So G equals 9.8 times 100. G equals 980 newtons. Yay. Let's remember this A, acceleration due to gravity, right? Acceleration and force. Cool. And we're going to look at something called projectile, not erectile, motion. Underline, cool, yeah. So let's say you're going to launch a ball. It's going to arc kind of like this, and there's an apex to the arc. So at this point, you apply a force for an instant, so at t equals 0, and force applied at t equals 0 is greater than 0, means there's a force being applied. But force applied at t greater than 0 equals 0. Oh no. So when you throw a ball, you throw the ball, and when it's flying in the air, you're not applying a force to it. The only force on it is the force due to gravity, right? Powerlifting is a war against gravity. Grr. So where are we getting with this? So because of gravity, there's a displacement that we can measure. And since we have the acceleration due to gravity, there are equations that go along with this. So y equals 1/2 a t squared plus v naught t plus y naught. And then you can also calculate the velocity. V equals a times t plus v naught. And then, you could also calculate the acceleration equals a. So technically, this is a y prime, y double prime, but that's for nerds, because that's calculus. We're not going to actually talk about calculus, so fuck the nerds and all the calculus, even though calculus is really fun. All right, so we're going to look at these two equations along with our F equals ma. So what can we learn from V equals AT plus V naught? So if we look back at our picture, at this point, we got V naught, which is greater than 0. And at the apex, V equals 0, and then also technically when Y naught equals Y, V equals V naught. But we don't care about that because we're not going to be failing benches. Right. So V naught T equals V naught. So at the apex, V equals 0. There's an AT plus V naught. Acceleration is going to be due to gravity. Time exists, and we got V naught. So while time goes above 0, there exists a time that implies that V equals 0, implying that GT equals V naught. That's just a little algebra, but I wrote it in weird math language. So there exists an initial velocity where you can reach an apex without any further influence. Right. So let's look at this equation. So y equals 1/2, and we already said that a was g, so that's a technically, t squared plus v naught t plus y naught. Y naught equals 0 because it's on the chest. So goodbye, I don't care about you. So we're looking for y apex, and that's going to equal 1/2 gt squared plus v naught t. Time exists, so we don't care about it. Cool. So basically what I'm saying is there exists an initial velocity such that we can overcome acceleration due to gravity. So I know what you're saying. What is this y apex? Y apex for me equals 8 inches. So if we go all the way back up here, we can go from here to here with no force. So How do we know this? How do we know this? How do we know this? So let's look at F equals ma. Right? You got this a here, and you got a here. Yeah, you got a here, and a here. So if we take a step back, you're not going to launch a bench all the way to lockout. So your force applied is not going to equal 0 realistically, which means a will not equal 0. But Patrick, y equals 1/2 a t squared plus v naught t plus your mother. That's 0. What is this a then? Well, technically speaking, that a is the sum of accelerations, which equals a applied plus a due to gravity. Your a applied is going to be greater than 0, and a of g is going to be less than 0. So your sum of accelerations will likely be less than 0, because this one's just going to be much lower than 0, and yours is going to be barely over 0. It's very difficult to accelerate something very fast. But also, if sum of accelerations equals 0, then this equation, this entire massive piece goes and fucks itself, and it's completely dependent on your initial velocity, which means initial velocity determines the success of a lift. Due to the limitations of being human, there is technically a V naught max that exists, but we don't care about that because no one's ever going to achieve it. Right. So V naught determines the success of lift, but you can still successfully complete a lift with applied force less than force of gravity due to projectile motion. If we go all the way back up and look at our picture of projectile motion, this is press, this is lockout. So even though you had a force applied at initial and then a force applied at 0 all the way for the rest of there, you still reached lockout. And how does this all make its way back to the pulse press, or as Greg Penor calls it, the Maguire press, kind of like a Spoto press. Pulse press increases your F applied at t equals 0 and your V naught, your initial velocity, speed off chest, big hole, lift. Cool. So you increase the speed off the chest, you turn your bar into a projectile, technically speaking. You get good speed off the chest, you're going to have a higher success rate on the bench press. But what else does it work? So this is you, and you're small, and this is your bench, and this is your full range of motion, and you are working the bottom third. So since your bar is a projectile, you actually have to stop the bar at this point before you you press it again. So you have to bring it up a third and then stop the bar. So you end up jingling the bar. It sounds like sleigh bells if Santa took enough creatine. So you jingle the bars, you're pressing as hard as you can right off the chest. But if you've ever actually done pulse presses, you'll notice a accruance of fatigue, which means you build up fatigue, and it's not like you can infinitely pulse press. No, that's not how it works. What happens is you start to wear yourself out, you're breaking down the creatine molecules in your body, the ATP is firing off, and your body's becoming depleted. So, rep 1, you are fresh. Rep 2, you are not fresh, but you're still not too shabby. And then you do a bunch of reps. Rep final is your AMRAP fatigue tolerance. So you've built up this amount of fatigue in your system, And your last rep is going to be your threshold for your pulse press AMRAP fatigue tolerance, which means +1 equals fail. So you're still fatiguing your whole system. That final rep is going to feel like the final rep of an AMRAP because you are fully depleted. But let's look at the stress on non-muscular systems. So this will be your cartilage, bones, ligaments, joints. You're working a third of the lift, so mathematically you're getting a third of the stress. But lockout is most stressful, and the middle is a transition. So realistically speaking, your stress is less than 1/3 of a full rep, but you get over 1/3 of the benefits. So you're stressing your body out less than 1/3, but you're getting more than the gains that you would get from 1/3 of a bench. That makes sense. Which means more gains for less stress. If this was the real world, that would mean that your money goes further. But in lifting, there's no money, there's just fatigue and stress, the body factors, which means your muscles, ligaments, cartilage go further. You get more gains per stress. Gains per stress is larger than full rep gains per stress. So cool. Your muscles going further, but why not do only? And why no heavy? And both of these can be summed up with lockout, middle, chest. Lockout, you can barely train and get lots of gains because you're going to lock out everything in every set. All right. The middle is trained by spottos, accessories, and full rep. And off the chest, pulses, accessories, and full rep. So let's say you got a projectile and it only reaches the middle. Well, then the middle work is going to turn your bar into another projectile and launch it to lockout. And then if you're any sort of lifter with proper form, then lockout, it just happens. So pretty much a bench equals the sum of its parts. Mostly the middle and off the chest, because that's where most people fail. Very few people fail at lockout, and if it's usually that's just a form issue. But why not only pulse? And the answer is you don't compete in pulse mode. Full reps only on meet day. You're never gonna get away with benching a third and them calling that lockout and racking it. That's why you don't only use pulses. Why don't you ever do heavy pulses? And that's because your pulse max is greater than your real max, and you still have to lock it out, which immediately means you gonna fail. And if you're like me, that means you die. I have no training partners. Yeah. Pulses work due to projectile motion. And that pretty much sums it up. Pulses work due to projectile motion and also bodily stress economics. I hope that's made sense to you guys. It's not really that hard, but I get asked this a million times every time I post a bench. So yeah, remember to have a large force applied, large initial velocity, and you're gonna have a good bench. Like comment, subscribe, and something about smashing a bell. I don't know. Do what you want. I'm not the boss of you. If you want to try pulse presses on a on like a fifth set and see how it affects your gains, also note I haven't not PR'd my bench at a meet in 7 years, and I've been doing these for 7 years, so there's got to be some sort of correlation between that. Try them out for yourself, but like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell. Bye-bye.